Let's welcome in our powerhouse panel this morning. Joining Allison and myself is Project 21 National Advisory Board member and radio host Christopher Arps and best-selling author and political analyst Mark Halperin back with us. Just want to get your initial reaction, Mark, to what we are this developing news out of eastern Ukraine. The numbers that we have right now, as Allison just said, 30 dead at least, and at least 100 injured. A Russian missile hitting a train station. And these are people, don't forget, Ukraine is not the United States. They don't have an interstate highway system like we have here. The railway system is not nearly as advanced or developed. It doesn't run in a straight line from east to west across this very large country. Again, a country the size of Texas. These people just trying to get to safer parts of Ukraine or get the heck out of Ukraine. What do you make of what the Russian army is now doing?
In Putin's history, he has no respect for human life and, in fact, uses terrorizing civilians episodically in order to try to achieve his aims. We've seen now some Ukrainians going back, but still more fleeing and attempting to flee. And I think this will up the pressure for more extensive either UN or NATO or some other configuration attempt to produce a support for a no-fly zone or some other way to have safe passage for folks to get out. And unfortunately, this is going to continue because this is what Putin has. This is where his battlefield successes have largely been, is terrorizing civilians.
Hold that thought on the no-fly zone for a second, because I do want to jump into that. We're in day number 45 of the war. Allison, if Vladimir Putin wants the West to stop covering the war, leading newscasts with this, if he wants this to sort of, get off the proverbial front page of the newspaper, why does he keep doing things like this?
Because, as Mark mentioned, he goes against and he's attacking civilians. We've seen this before with him. He attacked that maternity hospital. He attacked that shelter where they put children in Russia to let the troops know that there were children here. He doesn't care what he does. And again, we've talked to experts. Is he unhinged? What's his reason? What's he going to do next? But look, when these things happen, this does keep the story in the news. And it's extremely important to continue to tell Americans what's happening and tell the world what's happening there. Okay,
Allison, good point. Chris, I want to pick up on Mark's point about that no-fly zone. We've had General Holt. He's been encouraging at least some sort of civilian no-fly zone at the very least. So basically, the premise would be U.S. NATO cargo planes would let the Russian army know that we are flying into, say, the Donbass region. We're flying into Kyiv. We're flying into, major population centers. They would be escorted by military fighter plane, NATO fighter planes for the safety of these cargo planes. They would go in and just do daily runs evacuating just civilians, no military personnel. Do you think something like that is now on the table?
I think it's now on the table, and I think it should have been on the table from the very beginning when we saw that Putin was targeting civilians. I think I'm so sick of all of this piecemeal. We put sanctions on every couple of days. These are the harshest sanctions. We should have put the harshest sanctions that we have at the very beginning of the war when he started attacking civilians. And it was disheartening yesterday. The Senate passed this World War II era program where we lend-lease military equipment to allies.
Right.
We're 45 days in the war. Why is the Senate just passing something like this?
Yeah, that's a good point. Check that. No, we're 44 days into this thing. We're that far. No, I know, Chris. It's gone on far too long. I also want to talk about what happened in the United States Senate yesterday. Mark, Dick Durbin, Democrat, talked about the 3 senators that crossed the aisle and voted for Ketanji Brown Jackson, first African American on the Supreme Court. Take a listen.
First, I can't say enough for the 3, Collins, Murkowski, and Romney. They came through and took grief for it to a measure we rarely see around here. I respect them so much. I held out the hope that at the last minute, several others would join them and realize that they wanted to be on the right side of history at this moment. It didn't pan out that way.
Okay, so, we're used to seeing, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's 51 years old. She's taken over for Justice Breyer at some point this spring, as soon as he steps down. His vote was 87-9, incredibly bipartisan. Mark, do you think this is the way that these votes go from here on out? You might get a couple of senators on either side crossing the aisle, like we saw with Amy Coney Barrett. Do you think this is what we see now instead of the immense bipartisanship that we saw in years past?
Well, it's certainly the path we've been on and the path we're going to stay on unless something changes. And it's not good for the country. presidents win, they get a mandate of either party to pick the right nominees. If someone's qualified, Democrats are going to choose more progressive judges. Republicans are going to choose more conservative ones. And I think it'd be better for the country if we could get back to parties where they don't start reflexively opposing the other party's nominees. But that is not the path we're on currently.
Allison, just your take on, so Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, not up for re-election in 22. Lisa Murkowski, her term does end in November.
It didn't surprise me that the three of them voted for her. But, you know, obviously Murkowski, she's running again. But I mean, I think there is a lot of support for this judge on, you know, regardless if you're in politics, both sides. So it didn't surprise me that the three of them voted for her.
Yeah, all three, Chris, also voted for impeachment, by the way, back in January.
You know, as an African American, I have it.
Go ahead, Mark.
As an African American, I have a sense of ethnic pride seeing the first African American woman on the Supreme Court. Her political views are the direct opposite of mine, but I do wish her the best. I just thought it was really odd that Mitt Romney crossed over the aisle and voted for her to be on the Supreme Court when just last year he said she was out of the mainstream and he couldn't support her.
Yeah.
And the reason that he said he changed his mind is because he sat down with her for an hour.
That's a good point. And by the way, Lindsey Graham voted for her back in June when she was placed on the D.C. Circuit Court. So she's only been on the D.C. Circuit since June. But Lindsey Graham voted for her then, didn't vote for her now. Something shifted.
Lindsey's got an axe to grind, though.
Clearly now. Yeah, he also had a candidate from South Carolina that he thought was the better candidate. Mark, go ahead.
Well, just two things. One is, look, whatever you think of her politics or her judicial philosophy or how you think she's going to rule on the bench, it's a great day for the country to have a Supreme Court that looks more like America and an inspiration to lots of people. And everybody should support that and be excited about that and happy about the progress America has made with more work still to be done. On the question of bipartisanship, I think that you know, this is true of both sides. The Supreme Court has become amongst our biggest partisan battlegrounds. But there's just something fundamentally wrong with our system when Democratic nominees and Republican nominees don't have the presumption of confirmation, even with advice and consent. And I think it would be great if a president and a Congress could figure out, a Senate could figure out how to fix that.
Chris, just back to your initial point there. So we've got Thurgood Marshall, and we've got a justice, an African American judge on the court as well, conservative. So this is three now. She makes three out of 115 in U.S. history. So you're right. It is a pretty historic moment. It is pretty unbelievable. And it's pretty unbelievable that it took this long to get a black woman on the court. George W. Bush tried to do it almost 20 years ago. And you know who blocked it? Joe Biden blocked it.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah. Allison, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you talk about Joe Biden. He blocked it back then. I mean, he's done quite opposite things of what he did years ago. He said very different things and done different things. So.
All right, panel, we'll pick this back up in just a little bit. Thank you.